Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Elevate, an online learning platform for fundraising event professionals. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swain.
Hello and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. Today we're definitely heading up because we have the coolest person in the world joining us.
Absolutely true.
We've been thrilled to talk to Mallory Erickson, waiting and watching as her new book was released. She has new projects on the horizon, and we're so excited to be able to talk to her. She, as she self-proclaimed, is the individual that has no chill. She has big ideas, and she's coming to us live from her she shed in her backyard. We're thrilled to have you on the show, and we want to make sure that the audience understands who you are, all your big ideas. So
It's true.
Let's do an official bio introduction, and then we'll dive into it with Mallory.
Let's do it. Mallory Erickson works at the intersection of fundraising strategy, executive coaching, and behavior design to help nonprofit professionals master the most human part of their job, connection. A former fundraiser turned coach, she's the creator of the Power Partners Formula, a framework that has helped over 60,000 nonprofit leaders raise more from aligned funders without burnout, overwhelm, or compromise.
I told you, she's genius.
This is a perfect world we're talking about. In 2024, Mallory launched Practivated, an AI-powered platform where fundraisers can practice real donor conversations in a safe, dynamic environment. Think a flight simulator for fundraising. From big asks to tough objections, Practivated helps fundraisers rehearse, refine, and build confidence because performance improves with practice, and fundraisers deserve that too. Mallory, you are the gold in this sector. Thank you for all you do. Thank you for spending your time with us today. And we have so much to talk about.
I know.
So first up, let's talk about your new book.
Yes.
Tell us about What the Fundraising.
What the Fundraising, the title alone.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me on the show. I'm so excited to be here with both of you, to be talking about all of this. So thank you for what you do for the sector. And I'm just thrilled to dive into this conversation. It feels in some ways funny to start with What the Fundraising, because in certain ways that feels like the amalgamation of years and years of deep diving research. And so when I started my coaching practice and started working with fundraisers, and from my own lived experience as a fundraiser, I've said for a while I used the word obsessed, and then I found out I have ADHD, and I found out that about hyperfixation, which is, a lot of people talk about hyperfocus sort of in a moment, but hyperfixation is sort of this relentless desire to solve a problem, and for over a long period of time not being able to let it go. And that's sort of what the fundraising is. It is my thesis, my argument about what is causing the dual decline in donor participation in the sector with fundraiser burnout and exits in the sector. I have been just unable to believe that they are not connected, and I believe they are driven by the same transactional fundraising practices that feel horrible to fundraisers and horrible to donors. And the argument I wanted to make in What the Fundraising was, first giving people a little bit of a look inside my own fundraising journey, being really honest and open and raw about my fears and insecurities and vulnerabilities, and just sort of the crash landing that I feel like I had in this sector, because I feel like I'm in a place of privilege to talk about it. I don't have a board who's breathing down my neck. I don't have current fundraising response. And so I feel like if anybody, I have this positional privilege to be able to share openly and vulnerably without retribution. And so I wanted a part of the book. And then I talk about the history of the nonprofit sector and how that has led to these, this scarcity mindset that plagues the sector, leads to these transactional ways we're taught to fundraise. And like I said before, those transactional ways that we're taught to fundraise disengage donors and they dysregulate us. And I talk in the book a lot about the process of going from discomfort into stress, into chronic stress, and into burnout, about, because I think it's really important that we talk about what is happening inside our brains and our bodies when we fundraise, because how we feel and what we do and the results we see are really connected. So the first half of the book is really setting up that problem. Like, why do fundraisers feel so awful? Why are they leaving this sector in droves?
Yeah.
Why are donors disengaging in nonprofits? My sort of argument around the connection between those pieces, and a lot of the things that I believe are leading to the fundraiser chronic stress and burnout that we don't typically talk about, not just overwork, which certainly is a problem,
Sure.
but pressure, power dynamics, uncertainty, isolation. All of those things have been scientifically proven to create chronic stress and burnout. And we don't talk about those enough inside the sector, and what we can do about them. And then it's not all doom and gloom. Everybody's like, holy moly, you brought on like the buzzkill of the century. But the first half of the book is really setting that up. And the second half of the book is my, solution to that, which is what I call alignment fundraising, or alignment first fundraising, which starts with inner alignment. How do you create alignment inside yourself? I use my executive coaching framework and really walk people through how to understand what's happening inside their brain and their body when they fundraise, and different coaching strategies to shift their experience. Then I talk about building aligned partnerships. What does it look like to find alignment with different types of funders, how it's different from a corporate partner to an individual to a foundation funder. And then the book ends with building connected relationships. What does it really look like to be in connection with our donors? And all of which, the fundraising strategy side, is not possible if we are not connected to ourselves. So I really see it as these like kind of concentric circles around. We talk about alignment as a strategy a lot inside this sector, but we talk about it as a strategy, as words, not actually intention, because it hasn't started from inside of us.
So I want to scratch the surface a little bit on that. You just mentioned a whole bunch of elements that impact the fundraiser. One of those things that we see, experience, and talk about a lot in this sector is scarcity mindset. That scarcity mindset is that old school from way back in the day, we are a charity, please give us your pennies, right? How do we combat scarcity mindset? How does that evolution of moving beyond scarcity mindset impact the fundraiser and the work that they're able to do?
Yeah. So, I mean, this is such a big topic. And so I'll say just kind of a few high level things. One is that I think even just the awareness of scarcity mindset is really important, and divesting that from material scarcity. Material scarcity is true. Many of us experience it ourselves, our organizations experience it. And I'm not trying to discount that at all. However, when we layer on beliefs about value and what's available to us on top of material scarcity, we are creating twice as bad of a situation for ourselves. And so I say to people all the time, you can only raise the amount of money you believe is out there to be raised. If you don't believe it's there, if you don't believe it's in your donor database, if you don't believe it's in your community, you're never going to find it. Actually, that's how the brain works. And we could have a whole brain science conversation about that. So we have to shift the scarcity mindset in order to address the material scarcity issues. So I think pulling those apart is like a really, really important first step. The other thing is, look, capitalism teaches us that the most important thing in the world, the most valuable thing in the world is money. It isn't. You know what people want more than money? I'm not saying that a certain level of money isn't important for our livelihoods. But if you look at like our hierarchy of needs, what do we need before money? Belonging. And belonging. We need, a lot of scientists argue that you need belonging even faster and more critically than you need food, water, because your search for belonging, the moment we get ghosted, how fast does it, or somebody says something really rude to us that disorients us, how fast do we want to reconnect? How immediate do we feel our nervous system respond to that loss of belonging? It's instant, faster than thirst, faster than hunger. And you know what nonprofits give people? Belonging. So we have so much value inside this world so much value to individuals, to society, to communities. And we have lost that because of scarcity mindset, because we believe that when we're sitting down with a donor, they're the only one with the value because they're the one with the money and we're the one who needs the money. And we need to really, really root into our assets and our value. There, I will say to my folks all the time, there actually are a lot of people out there who can give you $1,000. There's only one organization out there who is doing what you do.
Yep.
So let's decide where the scarcity is, because it's actually in what you're doing and who you are and the offer that you're making. And that we should be going to those, conversations, knowing just how special it is what we're offering.
Yeah. Well, and I think, yes. Amen. Yes. I think
Hallelujah, all the things.
We can't fix the thing we don't name.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And this sector traffics in that as a foregone conclusion.
Right.
I mean, the history of philanthropy in this country is shady at best. And there are structures that have been put in place, material, philosophical, financial structures that have been put in place that make this true.
Yeah.
And we are experiencing some external factors right now in this specific moment in time in this country that is seeking to exploit that, right? We can do that work for them so that they don't actually have to do that work.
Yeah.
And so I am wondering, what are some of those, scarcity mindset is one of them.
Yeah.
What are some of those pillars and core ideas that we've inherited that we all run around and perpetuate on each other, that we, go to happy hour after the day and just bitch and moan about as foregone conclusions that you're looking to shift?
Yeah. I mean, I think in the book and when I was writing the book, I was having such a hard time also because my ADHD was sequencing, but this relationship between scarcity mindset and transactional fundraising, I was finding myself caught in this, what comes first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Absolutely.
Is it our fundraising practices that perpetuate scarcity mindset? Is it scarcity mindset that have created these transactional fundraising practices? I think you could actually make the argument for both, right? So,
Totally.
So for example, the overhead conversation. Okay, so we see, God, all the stuff out there about how problematic this belief set is. And yet we continue to run campaigns that say 100% of your donation goes to blank.
Right.
So we are doing it. We are creating more and more and more of that environment for ourselves, right? We are not challenging those beliefs in the ways that we show up, not where we always have to, it always has to be some confrontational conversation about overhead. It's actually, let's just stop putting value on no money going to operations. We could just stop doing that. And that would be super helpful in starting to shift some of these things, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, I think how we show up, saying no to donors. I have turned donors down and been I actually don't think we're a fit from our perspective. I hope you find an organization that's better aligned with what you're looking to do.
That's willing to do that thing that we will not do for you.
Yes. It is being willing to say that not all money is created equal.
Yeah.
Some money is super expensive to accept. Some money, if I wish anybody had told me anything when I started, is some money is very expensive to accept.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There was money that I took that the actually doing the things that were intertwined with that gift acceptance cost my organization so much more.
Yeah.
And I was just so stressed about being able to show my board that I raised that money, that I contorted myself to try to be everything for everyone. And so I think some of the things I want to change is people's belief that they can do these things, that they can let them go, that they can move on, that they have enough people who are aligned with their mission, that they don't need to be everything for everybody. I mean, I have a coloring book that I made for fundraisers years ago as like a truly like, random week. And I was like thinking about how to help fundraisers downregulate their nervous system while I was coloring in my adult coloring book. And I was like, oh, I should make them a coloring book.
I love it.
And on a lot of those pages, it says things like, let them go. And, just really trying to in these tiny little ways in which we talk to ourselves and to each other, to rewrite the positions of power that have sort of been like handed to us.
Yeah, donors can be toxic.
Yeah, they can be.
I mean, in the same way we break up with toxic partners, donors can be toxic. Yeah. And I think you use the language of contortion, and it's hard to watch. It's hard to watch organizations who are doing this mission work over here and say, we believe X, Y, and Z, except when it comes to this
the donor. Yeah.
And then we're going to kind of put these values over here. And yet part of the cost is other donors finding out.
Yeah. Yeah.
And okay, you're bringing up such an important point that I want to like double click on this, because I think the other cost is that it starts to separate the fundraising from our mission work, like from the point of our work, right? Because we're like, oh, we're really committed to all these things, except when we fundraise. And then all of a sudden the fundraisers feel disconnected from the work. And I was always like, oh, fundraising is this necessary evil or this thing we do to power the work. But good fundraising is the work. Like if we are aligned in our values of how we fundraise and how we achieve our mission, then it is the work. And there's a lot of risks in making exceptions on the fundraising side to the issues we're trying to address on the programmatic side.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
absolutely.
I think at its core, if those were more in alignment, this, gap that we always talk about kind of almost laughingly as like, what are you going to do? The gap between fundraising and program staff. But it's like, if we were all in alignment, it would feel like we were all working for the same organization and rowing in the same direction.
Well, I think what you're talking about, Mallory, as I sit here sort of digesting what you're saying, I immediately think this is turning the Titanic, right? Like this is when we've been going this direction for so long. How do we turn the Titanic, right? Like how do we, or the big ship, whatever that big, like, how do we make that move? And I think I'm so grateful you wrote this book now, honestly, because I think that while it is no small thing to do this kind of research and write this kind of text for folks, I think that we're in this moment of time of total transition. I think that we are witnessing those systems that didn't work, those tapes that we played for ourselves, those narratives that we had being rewritten. And I think this is a rewrite, right? Like you've created a path. You've created what you've coined alignment first fundraising.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone we all have a lot on our plate, but I feel like everyone should be looking to, as all of the things are changing around us, how are we rebuilding next to it? And I feel like your book is a path for that, is a tool for that. When you think about your reader reading What the Fundraising, which again, the title just is amazing. I want to know a little bit about like the hope or the inspiration that you hope that readers take away from the text. Like, where do you hope folks will go with this work?
That's such a good question. And I think there's like a few things. Like one, my most universal hope is that on the fundraiser side that people feel seen and that they don't feel alone, and that they know that these thoughts that have been in their head and this doubt that they've had about themselves and how uncomfortable they feel walking into that donor meeting, that it's all really normal. That's my like number one thing for folks. A lot of folks, I hear tech companies have their customer success people reading the book. And my hope is that they understand fundraisers better, that they treat them with the care and support that they deserve, that marketers at companies don't market to fundraisers in ways that dysregulate them intentionally so that they buy their thing to soothe their anxiety that they'll never be a good enough fundraiser without their fancy tech. So my hope is that I always say my North Star is to improve the lives of fundraisers. And that is like the North Star of this book too. That's my number one thing. And then I think, the next takeaway is one part of that validation is understanding where those thoughts and beliefs come from. And so that's a lot of what's inside part one, is to really help people understand why they feel that way and what's happening inside of them, and that it's normal. And then I want people to realize that all the things they want in terms of their fundraising, in terms of their outcomes, it starts inside of them. And I say in the book at one point, I hate that I have to make an argument about business, about wellness through a lens of business outcomes. I wish we could just take care of ourselves and each other because it's the right thing to do, and because we want the people inside this sector to feel good and valued and all the things they deserve. But that conversation has not moved us forward enough. So now I'm going to make a really clear case around why your fundraising is struggling and your bottom line is struggling if you aren't doing these things, if you aren't taking care of yourself and your organization in this way. So, but I think the commitment to self, as a part of and before the practices and the strategy, because otherwise you can't actually implement any of those ideas, is really core.
Yeah, it's interesting to think to me too about who the different readers are, because I was immediately thinking about our friends that are frontline fundraisers. But what you just talked about are folks that frontline fundraisers work with, collaborate with, right? Like their leadership teams, their tech partners. So if someone is reading this and they find aha and insight and resource in your book, how do they bring people along? How do they move their leadership team to see that the development team needs to have a shift, a fundamental shift in that mission alignment first fundraising?
Yeah. So, it's really funny. And I don't mean this as a cop out, although everybody's gonna be like, it's a cop out. My training and background is really at the individual level, like as a coach, habit and behavior design, those are all added my hope with this book truly was that this is not complete. This is not like, oh, I've solved fundraising. Here you all go. Great job. My hope is that this book is the beginning of a conversation, and then experts in other areas take this body of work and argue with it and tell me where I was wrong and say how they would do X differently and talk about how it could be applied organizationally. I would love for somebody with more of an organizational science background to look at this and make those recommendations, right? I mean, I think the number one thing we've seen is people reading it as a team, and for those leaders starting to gain a deeper sense of empathy. And also the executive coaching framework that's inside is really helpful no matter whether you're a fundraiser or not. It's from IPEC, Institute of Professional Excellence in Coaching. And so it's applied to coaches are applying that framework to everything. I'm just the first one who's really translated it to fundraising. So there's a lot in there for everybody. But all to say, the buck does not stop here. I hope this is step one, not the end of anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I believe strongly that there are a large group of people in this sector that want to rethink and redefine and evaluate and do that hard work. I think that it's hard work, but feel like now is the time to do that work.
Yep.
Right? We've been living with these narratives and these norms that we can bust and we can reshape. And I'm so glad you've written this book and you've done this work, but you've done other work.
Yes.
At the same time, mind you, that we also want to talk about.
Yes.
And it has to do for our video watchers with this little orange ink spot on my lapel. So we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to talk about Tivy and the ink spot.
Let's do it.
We'll be right back.
Ready to take your fundraising to the next level? Need to get unstuck in your event planning? Now's your chance to connect directly with the experts behind the Fundraising Elevator. Book a one-on-one consulting session with Sam for strategic planning and fundraising strategy, with Kristen for your program and storytelling, or Mary for your registration and data tools. They're here to provide you personalized answers to all your event questions. Don't wait. Raise more at your next fundraising event. Book your session today at elevatenonprofit.com. You can also find the link in the show notes.
All right, welcome back to the Fundraising Elevator. We're here with Mallory Erickson, author of What the Fundraising. I hope the folks will go out and purchase the book. We will have a link in the show notes so folks can find it. Host a book club, get your team together, read it together. But you, at the same time, while you were diving into this research, Mallory, and really trying to solve the fundraising problem, which is like huge in itself, turned to AI to see, how could I also create a tool, AI tool, that could be a resource? I'm not going to tell people about it. I want you to tell people about it, because it blew my brain of possibility of like, oh my gosh, this is amazing.
So Mallory, parenthetically, what you need to know is that when she came home from AFP Icon, this was literally the first thing out of her mouth. How are you? How was the train? Yada, yada.
You have to know what Mallory's doing right now.
That is exactly how this started. So please.
Tell us about Practivated.
Oh my gosh, I'm dying. Thank you. Gosh, where to begin? So in the midst of, writing What the Fundraising and being pregnant with my second, I found myself as the co-founder of something called Fundraising AI, which is about the responsible and beneficial use of AI in our sector. Mm-hmm. And I am not a technologist by training. In fact, I'm absolutely the nonprofit leader with tech trauma and the person who feels like she can't figure out what microphone she's using on Zoom every day. So I just want to frame that up. But I became the co-founder of Fundraising AI because I was really concerned about technology leaders driving the conversation around AI adoption without nonprofit leaders being a part of that conversation. And so, I worked with my co-founder, Nathan Chappelle, to put together the framework, the global, I'm the host of the Global Summit every year, where we are trying to provide free resources and learning to folks. At the same time, as I'm doing that work, there's sort of growing conversation in the world about job replacement, right? And are fundraisers going to get replaced by AI? And are we going to create these fundraiser bots that fundraise ahead of us? And I wrote on LinkedIn, gosh, maybe like a year ago now, before I even had the idea for Practivated. And I said, maybe a year and a half ago, I said, it's going to break my heart if our solution to the fundraiser crisis is to replace fundraisers with AI. Are we that short-sighted? Are we that uncreative that we cannot support them in real ways, that we need to have a robot replace them? We have to be able to do better than that. We just have to. And so, it feels like in a lot of ways, maybe Practivated is this different thing, but to me, it's just solutioning around the same problem, right? Which is, how do we really support fundraisers in their day-to-day work? I've said for years, I feel like my work falls at the intersection of fundraiser overwhelm and enablement. How do we decrease overwhelm and increase enablement? And so one of the, I've been trying to create solutions around fundraiser resistance and fear for years. And so I started to think about, okay, where do we see the most fear showing up, the most resistance showing up? It's talking to donors, right? It's not even just asking. We see a tremendous amount of fear. I've been running for years a thankathon, where I bring together fundraisers to make thank you calls together, because there's actually a lot of fear around thank you calls. People just picking up that phone, dialing that number, it sparks a stress response in our body. So I started to think one day about okay, well, what if the bot wasn't the fundraiser? What if the bot was the donor? What if you could actually use this same technology to give fundraisers a safe and private space to practice donor conversations and to practice the most tender, challenging moments of conversations and get feedback on them in a safe way, talk to a coach about them in the safe way, and grow your confidence, grow your skills in ways that help you deepen your connection with donors. Like, what if we used AI not to replace humans, but to enhance humanity, to enhance our capacity for deep connection? And so I started to build Practivated with the development team at night because I have no chill. And I was so curious if I could solve this problem in this way. And it turns out that it was something that a lot of people were interested in. And I ended up raising a pre-seed funding round around it. And that was led by Jay Love, who founded Bloomerang and eTapestry and has been involved in, Give Butter and Instrumental and a lot of the big tech names that we all know. And we closed that February 21st. I've been building an engineering team, bringing on an incredible technical co-founder, and just sort of building the team around this product, which is really focused on exactly what I said, giving fundraisers a safe space to practice voice conversations with donor avatars that are completely contextual, completely customizable. And in addition to all of those sort of custom scenarios where you can go in and have a 30-minute conversation with what feels like a totally real donor based on an upcoming meeting that you have. You can also chat with Tivy, who's our AI coach inside the platform. We love Tivy. It's the ink splots. Tivy's our octopus and logo and our coach inside the platform. You can have a coaching call with them at any point and get key action items from that call that will help you create and follow up on to take that next effective fundraising action. And then we just actually built inside the platform this past week these shorter practice scenarios that are between 1 and 7 minutes long, and they actually bring you to the heart of a tender moment in a conversation. So instead of having to customize the whole thing, you can click on a scenario and get rejected immediately, have a donor say no, which I think is so important because when we talk about nervous system regulation and building that resilience, we need to hear it. We need to see what we say next, right? You can go inside the platform and talk about overhead. You can have a donor who says, I'm really surprised you reached out to me this year asking for an unrestricted gift. I've never done that before. Talk to me about why that's important. You can go in and talk about a donor who is concerned about leadership issues at your organization and wants to and doesn't want to give until there's a leadership change, which we hear that happen a lot of the time, or budget concerns based on the economy at the moment, political instability, everything we're dealing with right now. I just kept hearing on call after call, people want to practice those same moments. And so we're building this practice scenario library where you just go in, get started. You can also practice moving a monthly donor to a large donor, moving having a corporate partnership meeting, talking to a foundation for the first time, talking to a lapsed donor, your first capital campaign gift, planned giving, all of those things. We really just want to enable people through real practice to be able to have these conversations in real time in really meaningful ways and not have to say something for the first time
to
when
your
it
big
matters
donor.
most.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I am working hard to lean into this moment around the acceleration of AI and technology with the intention of letting humans human better. I'm finding that my ability to latch onto it conceptually is enhanced when I center that idea. And I think that is what I'm hearing is at the heart of Practivated. Can you talk a little bit about what this makes possible for people that they aren't experiencing now as fundraisers?
Yeah, I mean,
and why it's an asset that way. Because I think sometimes in this space, we all hear that and go, oh my God, even though we're practicing and AI isn't the fundraiser, AI is the donor, I still think there's some of that hackle up a little bit around that as a practice and what that looks like. So from an asset-based perspective, what is it that this gives people the opportunity to do that they can't and or aren't doing now?
Do you mean with generative AI in general?
No,
or
I
with
think
Practivated?
I think with Practivated and the idea of donor stewardship and what that looks like.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the things, so a few years ago, I did a survey to my list, and one of the questions on the survey was, how many more donor meetings do you want to have a week? And I think the options were like 0, 1, 2, to 5 or something like that. The first most common response was 1. The second most common response was 0. 0. Okay. 0.
I'm actually surprised that wasn't first.
Okay. But here's the thing, right? I have a list of 17,000 people who want to raise more money, because why else do you follow me? That's what I'm talking about all the time. So 17,000 people who want to raise more money and want to have no more donor meetings in order to do it.
Yep.
There is some serious avoidance there. And one of the things that I realized is that, our fear of donor meetings doesn't actually just come into play when we're in that donor meeting. It comes into play in all of the actions that we take as fundraisers that could potentially lead to that donor meeting.
Yeah.
And so we stop touch points, we stop surveys, we hold ourselves back on so many fundraising actions that move donors forward into more connected relationships with us and our organization, because we're so afraid that maybe one time someone will ask us a question that we don't know the answer to, and that's going to somehow be the end of our world and everything's going to implode. And so, the thing about the practice is like, yes, does it help you go into your next meeting with that particular donor feeling more confident and clear and having a better sense of what questions they might ask you? Is it going to help you create your briefing sheet in a better way? 100%. Is it going to help you prospect corporate partners better? Because I don't know about any of you, but I cannot read a whole foundation website, a whole corporate partner website, and really feel like I have a sense of what I'm doing or what they do.
Yeah.
But you know what you can do? You can put the URL inside Practivated when you set up a corporate meeting or set up a foundation meeting, and the avatar will act as if it works for that entity based on the information publicly available. So all of a sudden, the other day I did this for a client. I was like, I do not have time to figure out, like, this website is so confusing. I put the URL inside Practivated and had a conversation with the company to figure out if there was alignment between my client's organization and that company. And
amazing.
And through dialogue, through conversation, through the way many of us learn better, and particularly if you're neurodivergent, this way of learning and practicing and building your skills and getting feedback on them is also really important, because neurodivergent fundraisers, oftentimes it takes a lot more energy for us to practice with a peer. There's a lot more fear around that. We have a lot of insecurities around whether or not we're reading social cues correctly, or if the way we said something makes sense to somebody else. I don't know about you guys, but I've been handed a million fundraising scripts over the years, none of which sounded like me, felt like me, or felt like any way I could make them work for me. And one of the things about building Practivated was like, there's so many ways to be a great fundraiser. There are so many ways to be a great fundraiser. And inside the system, when you get feedback, we have 4 primary skill areas: fundraising specific skills, communication and delivery, strategic thinking, and relationship building. Under each of those skill areas, we have 4 indicators that you get scored on. And then you can get insight into, what we saw inside the platform, why it matters, and what to do next. But those ratings, it's not one script. It's not one way, right? There's so many ways to structure a donor meeting in ways that move a conversation and a relationship forward. There's so many ways to create a next step that feel good to both parties. And so I think what's really important, what you could never do before, is be you as a fundraiser, because the best way to fundraise is in alignment with you. It's not to read somebody else's script. It's not to do it some way that some major gifts coach told you at a conference 4 years ago. It is to be in alignment with yourself, in your body, to feel good, to feel connected, to feel genuinely curious, like alignment as an intention, not as a strategy. And the only way to show up that way is to find your voice and find your fundraiser fullness. And I feel like I know no other way to do it than to give you a space like this that is private, secure, personalized, and gives you feedback based on you.
See why I came home talking
I
about
know.
this?
Well, what I'm also thinking about is this kind of feedback loop, this kind of coaching,
Safe
mentoring,
space.
safe space is something that doesn't exist in our sector,
Yeah.
right? If we're out as fundraisers and we've brought our ED along on this
Right.
ask, riding back in the car with them, getting
That's our coaching.
our feedback
You
after the
should
fact
have.
when it doesn't go the way,
Totally.
Yeah.
and that does nothing for me for the next,
Okay.
except trying to figure out how to schedule that meeting when the ED is out of town.
I want to play a game of what if.
Okay, great.
Okay, so
Hit me.
one of the things that we get calls with our clients about is, oh my God, I got the meeting, right? Like there's that moment of they got the meeting with the sponsor or
Which
the
is
donor.
both exciting and terrifying,
Right.
all at the same time.
Totally.
So let's say Joe and Max are giant philanthropists in our community, and Joe and Max are a couple. They show up to a bunch of different fundraising events. They give generously. They also serve on a couple of boards, but I don't know them. I've never met them. Can I enter all of the information I know about Joe and Max and create a persona? Or am I strictly talking to Tevi, the octopus? Like can I practice that ask?
Yes. So when you go inside the platform, there are three primary things that you can do. You can create custom donor scenarios. So that's where you're inputting a bunch of parameters about what you know about the donor. Right now, we don't take in donor identifiable information.
Yeah,
So we
yeah.
on an individual level. So
Right.
you wouldn't put in like a LinkedIn profile because we aren't scraping around individuals. And there's some responsible AI
Yes.
reasons
Yes.
for that.
Thank you.
And then, but you could still put in, so you would like name the scenario, you would put in all the goal of the meeting, which is really important. I can talk about that. The goal of your first meeting with them, is it to introduce yourself, to introduce the organization? Then you would select their primary motivation if you feel like you know it,
Okay.
their past history with the organization, any personality characteristics. So we ask about, are they skeptical? Are they pushy?
Oh.
Are they urgent, right? Because I heard from the beta testers that my bots were way too nice. So we had to add some of those little sliders in there. And then we have an open text field where you could put anything else. So you could say, we know that, they have historically given to X type of organization. We're seeing if they're open to blank. So you can put in some of that without, identifying who the actual people are.
Yeah.
And then, yes, it will create a fully custom avatar for you.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Because I experience all the time that people contact us because we do so much work within the community that people know that we have some tangential relationship to a donor, and they want insider information. They want an understanding of who this donor is, how to approach them. That idea that I could sit down and say, okay, my donor is sort of new to me, but they have a history. They've been giving to this organization, but I also know that they've given to arts organizations in my community and social service organizations in my community. And I've been sent to make this ask by my leadership team for them to be a lead gift in our gala at $50,000. How can I practice this? And is this possible? That's beautiful. That idea that I can pre-think some of those things, right? Like it forces me to sit down and think about those things, have that moment of exercise and ask, and lead me to the vulnerable moment of asking, what does the feedback cycle look like?
Yeah. So right after you end the simulation, you get a little like hang tight for a second, because actually generating this amount of feedback that's fully personalized and contextual takes a minute. So it actually takes about a minute, which we don't always see in technology these days.
Yeah.
We see like a lot, but it's really important. And so then you wait a minute with our little hang tight thing. Then you get to the feedback screen. That's where you see those four skill indicators that you can click into and see, or those four skills, and you can click into and see the four indicators underneath each of them. You can click on each of them and see, what we noticed, why it matters, what to try next. And then we also give you a donor sentiment. So we basically tell you how the donor avatar felt during that conversation in terms of their belief about whether their donation would make an impact, the level of empathy that they felt, the level of connection that they felt, and the level of alignment that they felt. So we give you those things. We also give you on the feedback page a micro touch point recommendation for today. So not a follow-up, because that meeting didn't actually happen yet, right? But we know that what strengthens donor relationships are also all these little touch points in between conversations. So based on the conversation that you just had, we have this micro touch point recommendation saying you should send, Joe a quick email today mentioning the outcome of that program that you just said in that simulation to strengthen that relationship. So it gives you a micro touch point action. We're building an email feature that will help you be able to draft and then send that email more easily as well. And so that happens. And then we also, because so much of my work is about connecting how we feel to what we do, we also collect how you felt during that simulation. We ask for a moment of reflection, personal reflection from you about how did that simulation feel, and some kind of like journaling around it. You have the opportunity. You can also, one of the really cool things is when you go into any of the indicators, any of the sub indicators. So that could be like ask effectiveness. Let's say you made the ask during the meeting, ask effectiveness, you get, what we noticed, why it matters, what to try next. Let's say you're still like, I don't know how I could have improved that.
Yeah.
You can click on the button right in the feedback screen, and Tivi will arrive, and they have all of the information about the call that you just had with the donor, and they will coach you right then and there around that indicator, around how you could have done that better. Yeah, it's pretty unbelievable.
We've been slowly moving Kristen closer and closer to feeling comfortable with AI.
Well,
and you're like spinning wheels. I could see them.
I mean, I think, I think technology is a thing that's been hot, touch, burn, I think the difference for folks is where's the human in it?
Yeah.
And what are we trying to achieve? And I think this centers that really well.
Yeah.
And we're trying to actually center the fundraiser to feel good about what they're doing.
Yes.
And to feel buoyed and equipped to go be in communion and human and foster a relationship with somebody. That's a very different outcome, right?
Yeah.
That's a very different purpose.
Feeling in alignment with your work, feeling connected, feeling, brave and confident.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I mean, look, I think your fears around technology and AI are super valid, and I share them. I mean, totally. I'll tell you that a big reason that I did this was because I was afraid if I didn't do it, somebody else would do it. And they do it in a really transactional way that was all about speed of gift closed and would be giving all this feedback on all the things. It was just around money, and we'd get stuck in the same trap again where we're only tracking lagging indicators instead of leading indicators, and not looking at the things that actually really build connection. I also think a lot of these platforms are geared towards just constant use with most platforms don't want you to leave them. Right?
Yes.
That's how they're built.
Yes.
So a lot of these conversation tools, the way that they're built is to keep you talking to the bot forever.
Yeah.
That is literally the opposite of what I want.
Right.
I want you to, it is all about, that's why it's not just about the simulation and then more and more and more simulation. It's like simulation to action, simulation to email, simulation to scheduling the meeting, right? It's all about how does this actually get us over the action line to have more human connection, like a huge KPI for me. And as we move into CRM integrations and being able to track the relationship between their, how they participate in our platform and what they actually do in their environment, a huge KPI for me is more conversations, more meetings, more connected relationships, better sentiment about the organization. Like, it's not just like, how much did they use? How much did they talk to my bots today? So I think your concerns are super valid. I share them. And I think it's a big part of the reason why folks like us should be actively engaged in these technology conversations and decisions and designs, because then we can build them in human-centric ways instead of having these tech bros come in and tell us what we need as fundraisers. And, when they've never fundraised a day in their life, and tell us that we won't be good enough unless we use some blank tool today. And we're just chasing around these shiny objects that burn us out and scatter us and ultimately don't move our missions forward in any way.
Well, and I think that's the biggest piece that I'm learning to swallow is that it will be put upon us.
And whose hands is it in?
So,
right.
So
like,
how do we want to do that? So I think about our nonprofit friends in organizations that also share this hesitation, and what is possible for organizations when their fundraisers have this kind of lab. I think, adoption for a fundraiser within an organization, while the fundraiser might be on board, and like, yes, this speaks to all the things I want. Do you have ideas about how that conversation is so that everybody sees this potential asset?
Yeah. So there's a few different things here. One is that, we're building the individual product, but we're also building this as a team and organizational product.
Awesome.
So there's an organizational level. You can have multiple teams under each organization, and then you can have multiple fundraisers under each organization. Also, and so on those different layers, we're going to have analytics and insights, not in a big brothery way. This needs to be a private, safe place for people to practice, but managers should be able to know where their fundraisers are like hitting it out of the park, so that maybe that fundraiser should actually be leading your storytelling training, right? You don't need to hire a consultant. You have this fundraiser inside who is phenomenal and is getting TV level talent every single time. They should be leading your storytelling workshop. But then you should also know, hey, only 15% of your fundraisers feel comfortable talking about overhead at all, right? You should be able, I want them to have organizational level analytics, individual analytics about biggest areas to support growth around and where they're like really excelling, so that they can support their fundraisers better. It's not going to be like scores or, transcripts and stuff like that, but we want to support managers to be more focused in their coaching and support of their fundraisers. And then we want them to have team level analytics also, and organizational level analytics also around, okay, if you're going to invest in professional development, if you're going to invest in other coaching or a conference, well, what if it was on the thing your team is actually struggling with? So brilliant. We want to be like sourcing up those patterns. This is where generative AI is a really powerful tool. I mean, the truth of the matter is, I could have never built this tool without generative AI. There isn't a way. You could never have these fully contextual conversations before, right? You could never source and make accessible that type of pattern recognition and analytics and usability of that information. Like, I just couldn't have built it before. If I could have, I would have. And so I think I'm really thinking about that. The other thing is, at least right now, in terms of these early adopters and design cohorts, this is not going to age this podcast well, potentially, but I'm not actually charging per seat in the platform. And the reason I'm telling you this is because I think you're asking about the full organization. And I actually think, we talk a lot about the culture of philanthropy, but I think a lot about the culture of fundraising inside organizations. And how do we equip full organizations to be talking about impact and fundraising and not feel like it's a bad word and not feel like, because I was just talking to a huge national organization and they're like, our frontline program people are interfacing with donors all the time. Gosh, it would be so nice to let them practice a few conversations, so that they don't feel so caught off guard or so worried having these, talking to these folks for the first time when they go on a tour of their center. And so I really want, I'm trying to remove any barriers. I don't want people to be like, oh, but I wouldn't want a license for the board member or for the volunteer. So I'm just like, okay, forget it. Like, we're just doing your tier and your kind of like contract is around minutes of, practice and you can allocate those however you want.
That's
and
amazing.
You can have somebody come in for 10 or 20 minutes and help them with something that's coming up. And then you have your power user fundraisers who are in these meetings and practicing this stuff every single week. So I'm really trying to think about, how do we improve fundraising culture inside organizations using a tool like this too?
Yeah, because nothing kills a great fundraiser than the water they're swimming in at the organization, And so I think that's very wise.
Mallory, your work is fundamentally looking to change the water we're swimming in, right? And what I'm hearing is you've solved fundraising. You have some great tools. You've solved imposter syndrome. You've solved board development. The work that you're doing, I've followed your work for a really long time, but I really appreciate and value that you've put a ton of thought into asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And by asking the right questions, you've done the research and you've developed some tools and resources that I think we need right now, especially in a time when so much is changing and we have that opportunity where we no longer have to steer the Titanic because it already hit the damn iceberg and sank. Now we're rebuilding a new version, and we're rebuilding something that is more sustainable and more mission aligned. And to your point, more aligned with ourselves and our values. And I just appreciate that. I appreciate you and the work that you're doing so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for all of that. And I just want to say one other thing before we go, if it's okay. There are a lot of reasons to be resistant to AI, and I don't want to discount them, from the inequities around where these plants are being built, to the way that it's taking work away from artists, to there's so many problems, and there always is with technology advancements, just like with the internet and stuff like that. And I'm not saying that to excuse any of it by any means. I think all of our dialogue around how harm is being caused by this technology is really important. And I don't want to see our sector opt out of those conversations fully, or that market fully, because what happens if all the other guys use this tool and we don't? And everything starts moving a million times faster but us. And, I think a lot about cars, right? I used to run a grassroots environmental organization, and I bought a hybrid in 2013 or whenever it was. And I made certain decisions about when I drove and when I didn't. And I didn't become a NASCAR racer and joyride all over the place. I was aware of my carbon footprint related to transportation, but I also drove where I needed to drive to get the job done. And I want people with AI to realize there's a lot of gray here. There's a lot of nuance, and you can enter the waters without just using it unconsciously all the time and wasting resources. You can be really intentional about when and how you use it to drive your mission forward. And I'm not just talking about Practivated, I'm talking in any way you're making that AI decision. I think we should be asking each other to just to figure out that nuance, because I have a lot of fears around AI, but honestly, one of my biggest ones is what happens if the nonprofit sector doesn't get on board and the rest of the world does.
Yeah, absolutely. That's an important distinction. We had a conversation with Ann Murphy. You might know Ann. You probably do. And she indicated to us that we are feeding that machine when we're using its generative AI. And if we're not in the social sector doing the good work in AI, then there isn't a information stream and a fuel for the smart, kind, human-centered work that we really hope AI can impact. And so I appreciate that perspective. We're going to take a very short break and come right back to ask Mallory to join us in the fundraising elevator. So we'll be right back. We've been partnering with Greater Giving for over 20 years as our go-to event auction software. Greater Giving allows us to do our job planning fundraising events even better because we can manage guest lists, seating, bid number assignments, and sales all in one place.
That makes it great for our nonprofit partners and their guests. Check out Greater Giving for your next event at greatergiving.com. Link in the show notes. Welcome back. We are here with Mallory Erickson. We are getting in the fundraising elevator where we are all headed up. Mallory, what is that one piece of wisdom, that one tip that you would offer our fabulous fundraisers to keep them headed up?
I want them in this moment to show themselves self-compassion and give themselves a break. I want you to walk outside. I want you to take some deep breaths. I want you to close your eyes. I want you to jump on your trampoline. I want you to listen to the birds. I want you to downregulate your nervous system. It's all about self-compassion and grounding ourselves down in this moment where we're needed.
I love that.
I love that too.
Mallory, thank you for the good work you do.
Yeah.
Thank you for grounding us in today's conversation. I want to know, there's a couple of different tools I want to know real quick for folks. How do folks find your book?
They can go to malloryerickson.com/book. And it's on bookshop.org and Barnes and Noble and every other problematic bookstore out there. But if you go to malloryerickson.com/book, you can get links to all of them.
Perfect.
Excellent.
Love it.
What about Practivated? It's not something that's like on a store shelf. So how do folks access Practivated? I know it's sort of in rollout stage right now.
Yes, if you go to Practivated.com, you can book a demo with me and get a little introductory call. We're actually sort of inviting people in waves and sort of hand selecting organizations that we think are a great fit. But check it out, Practivated.com, and then sign up to do an introductory call with me, and we can figure out if you're a good fit for the next wave.
Love it.
And what if someone just was so inspired and wants like some coaching time with you? How do they find you?
So if you go to MalloryErickson.com and you look at the Alignment Fundraising Collective, that's my group coaching program. And we have live calls twice a month. I don't do one-on-one coaching anymore. But it is me. I'm the only coach inside the Alignment Fundraising Collective, and an incredible group of nonprofit leaders and fundraisers and, kind of folks in a bunch of different positions. We meet live twice a month. And that's the best way to kind of be one-on-one, get one-on-one advice from me live.
Perfect.
Well, Mallory, I'm so excited that I got inked by Tivi and that I got to learn more about the amazing work that you're doing and that you're willing to come and join us today to share with others. So thank you for solving all the problems and asking all the good questions.
No, I have not solved any of the problems yet, but hopefully provided a few more tools to help us all collectively do so. I'm so grateful for the space that you provided here and for this conversation. Thank you for having me.
You're super inspiring. So
Thank you.
Thanks for being here.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced in partnership with Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV Department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson, Heidi Christensen, and Adam Breeden. Video production by Shannon Doran. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. Marketing by Lisa Aragon. Support from Mary Elizabeth, Todd Campbell, John Lyles, and Andy Dowsett. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV Department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV Department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.